Do you want to learn how to play better chord changes? I know better is subjective, but more musical, more melodic, all over the neck, maybe with more sophistication even, or more finesse. It might surprise you, but in order to do this, we're actually going to move away from bar chords. This is kind of confusing for people who are learning bar chords or kind of getting into bar chords for the first time, because when you first learn bar chords, they provide this liberation. For the first time, you can move away from your open C and G chords, and you can play stuff up the neck. You can start to use the neck in a way that we really weren't able to do before. But over time, I found that bar chords tend to get old. They tend to feel a little clunky. They tend to feel like a little ham-fisted. So what we're going to do today is we're going to move away from bar chords and we're going to move into playing with triads. So what we're going to do today is we're going to work on playing chords and chord changes in a little bit more of a musical way. And this is going to be based on triads, or the caged method, if you've heard of it like that. And it's also going to incorporate voice leading. Now, all of this stuff is going to be linked below: PDF overview, chord charts, tabs, backing track, everything you need to incorporate this into your own playing. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, triads, voice leading, musical jargon. Let's get to the bottom of what we're really talking about. A chord is 3 or more notes. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6 notes, 7 notes. A triad is a chord, but it only has 3 notes. This is important because it pares down a chord into its essence of chord, its fundamental identity. This is where we're going to focus. We're not going to play our big bar chords, we're going to play the triads that those bar chords are based on. And if this is going over your head, don't worry, we're going to keep talking about this. Stick with it. A triad is just a way to be more specific about what it is we're playing. I'm playing 3 notes, and that's it. Voice leading. What's voice leading? Voice leading is really interesting. Voice leading is the idea that a note in a chord is actually a voice that moves to another note in another chord. Now, the cool thing about this is that once we can harness that, we can do a lot with it. But it's actually already happening whether or not we know it. Let's take this G chord at the 3rd fret and let's pick a note out of it. Let's pick the 4th string. That's a G. G. When we move that up to be a C at the 8th fret, that 4th string note is C. So when we're playing a G to C with the E shape, the voice on the 4th string is actually jumping all the way from G to C. And if we go back and forth, G, C, G, C, G, it feels a little clunky. There's a long way to go. Let's take another note, the B note on the 3rd string. B, that goes up to E, E in the C chord. That's a long way too. B, E, B, E, B. It's kind of clunky. It's got a long way to go. It lacks a little bit of finesse. Voice leading is this idea that that B isn't going to go all the way up the string. It's going to go to the closest note in the next chord. Hopefully, it's only going to move by a half step or a whole step. And it might even not move at all if a note is shared by the 2 chords we're changing between. Again, if this is going over your head a little bit or you're not, don't worry. We're going to keep talking about this. Just stick with it. So let's get started. Our goal is to play a C, F, C, G chord change. This is a 1-4-1-5. This is very common chords, and it's in a very common key, the key of C major. If you can do this in this key, you're going to be able to turn it into things in other keys. So it's a great thing to be able to do. Let's start with our C triad. So here it is. This is a C triad. C, E, G. So where do those notes come from? Well, crash course, chords are built with every other note from a scale. So if we take our C scale, that's C, and then we go through the notes in the musical alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We come back to C. We take every other note to make a chord. C, skip D, take E, skip F, take G. C, E, G. That's where this comes from. And fact, all chords in Western music are built on this idea. So here's our C, E, G, and you might recognize this as being a part of this big E-shaped bar chord. Those notes are in the E-shaped bar chord. But since we're playing a triad, we're paring it down to just those three. This chord is still only C, E, G, but there's a lot of repetition. There's actually 3 C's. C on the 6th string, C on the 4th string, C on the high E string. We're getting rid of all that redundancy and we're just playing C, E, G. So our next chord is going to be F. And let's not think about shapes and moving bar chords and stuff like that. Let's think about notes, right? How do we build a chord? Well, we start with that F and we go through the musical alphabet and we take every other note. So F, skip G, take A. Skip B, take C. And don't worry about sharps and flats right now. The key of C doesn't have any, so we're going to simplify a little bit. F, not G, A, not B, C. F, A, C. Okay, so what do I do with this? Well, we want to move our C, E, and G to be F, A, and C. And the first thing we're going to notice is that the C note is shared between the two chords. There's a C in a C chord, and there's a C in an F chord. So we're not going to think about shapes, we're going to think about notes. Let's go back to our C, E, G. Maybe those other notes in that F chord are right under my hand. I mean, the C is, we just established that C doesn't change from chord to chord. Okay, let's take the next note, E. The E in the C chord is actually a half step away from the F in the F chord. E and F are a half step away, which is 1 fret, which means if this is E, this is F. It's right there. Let's take the next note. So we had a G in our C chord, C, E, G. We got an A in an F chord, F, A, C. But G is only a whole step away from A. That's a distance of 2 frets. So if this is G, this is A. And it is. That's your open 5th string. That's your A. So hold on. C, E, G. C stays the same. E moves to F. G moves to A. This is our F chord. Now it's not F, A, C. It's C, F, A. But that's okay because we still have the same notes. We're just not starting with F. And for us, that doesn't really matter right now. We have a C, E, and a G. And then we have an F, an A, and a C. And they're all right under our hands. And the voice leading means that these notes don't have to move very far. E goes to F. G goes to A. Na, 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 na. You start to hear melodies coming out of the chords. They're not just big, clunky bar chords. There's voice leading, there's melody. Na, 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 na. It's kind of cool. You start to hear things from the chord change. And all we did was we looked at notes rather than shapes. We said, how can I move these notes to get to the next chord in the smallest way possible? And again, this is all in the PDF overview, tabbed out chord charts, everything you need. Now you may recognize this shape too. That's really out of an A form bar chord. But by removing the whole 6th string, 5th string bar chord, the clunkiness, the lack of finesse is sort of removed, and we have this slightly more beautiful, sophisticated, maybe finessed chord change, right? It's certainly not the only way to play a C to an F, but it's another way, and it sounds good. All right, let's talk about our last chord. So we have a G chord, and we're going from C to G. So no shapes, no movement. What are the notes? C is C, E, G. What are the notes in G? Well, we go through the musical alphabet from G, and we take every other note. So we go G, we skip A, so we take B, we skip C, and we take D. G, B, D. Those are the 3 notes in the G major triad. Notice something interesting about G and C chords? They share the G note. So when we're playing C, E, G, maybe this G note doesn't have to move. Let's find where those other notes are going to be using the voice leading principle. So if we have a C in our C chord, that's a half step away from the B in the G chord. B and C are a half step apart, which is 1 fret. So the C moves down to a B. And that's a B. That's the same as our open B string. That's a B note. The next note in the C chord is E. And that is a whole step above the D note in the G chord. So a whole step is 2 frets. E moves down to D. So we have G that doesn't change between the two chords, C that moves down to B, and E that moves down to D. And what we get is this. That's nice. Now that's a lot different than that. Different horses for different courses, as they say. You might find that bar chords work great in certain songs. But if that's your only option, it may feel limited. Triads allow us to find chords that are right under our hands. Maybe we didn't even realize it. And we get to take advantage of voice leading. Your ear will start to pick up on individual notes. Na, 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 na. That G stays there between the chords. Na, 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 na. This C note na, 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 goes down to B. Na, da, da, da. You have a nice little movement. You have a nice little voice that's moving. You start to hear melodies popping out of the chords. It's really cool. It's really interesting. All right, let's put it all together. Our C chord is C, E, G. Our F chord is F, A, C. When we move from C to F, C doesn't change. E goes up to F, and G goes up to A. And we get this, C to F. When our C chord goes to G, G is shared. C, E, G is the C chord, and G, B, D is the G chord. G doesn't move, but C goes down to B, and E goes down to D. And C, E, G becomes G, B, D, or in this case, B, D, G. Again, not in root position. C chord, G chord. All right, so let's hear this in context. There's a backing track. I'm going to play C to F, C to G. The first time around, I'm going to use bar chords, the E shape moved around, and the second time around, I'm going to use our triad shapes to incorporate those smaller movements, that voice leading. Let's go ahead and listen to what that sounds like. Sounds pretty good, right? Now, it might not replace your bar chords altogether, but it's certainly a good thing to have in the bag because it opens up a lot of options, and you might even start to hear melodies forming out of your chord changes. Now, the big picture idea here is that triads are the key to playing all over the neck. Wherever you are, there is a triad of the chord you're looking for right under your fingers. We just got to be able to find it. Now, something cool we haven't said about this is that if we think of this as a 1, 4, 1, 5, we can move it around. If this is 1, then this is 4 in relationship to that. So if I want to play, say, in the key of A, I start in an A position, and then I have the 4 of A. Now, you might not even know what that is, but now I can play 1, 4, 1, 5, in an entirely different key by moving these triad relationships around. Again, they have to be in the same relationship. 1, 4, 1, 5. Not the key of C, not C, F, and G chords, but a 1, 4, 1, 5 in a variety of keys you can play just by moving these around. So that's a long-term goal to be able to put that together. All right, let's review. Bar chords Old hat. We're never going to abandon them completely, but we can use triads to play chord changes all over the neck and incorporate a little bit more finesse with voice leading, where a note only moves by a fret or two between two chords that we may not realize are right next to one another. We put together a C-F-C-G chord change in one position on the neck with 3 different triad shapes. That's your main focus. If you can do that, you can move it to change keys. You can rearrange those triad shapes for other chords and other keys and other positions. But if we can't do one thing, we certainly can't do all those other things. So make that one chord change your focus. There's a backing track to play along to, practicing your chord changes, and the chord shapes and tabs are in the overview PDF, so you have everything you need to incorporate this into your playing. Now, you don't just have to play the backing track. If you've got a song you're working on or writing that uses C, F, and G, use these triads to play that song. Or maybe there's a song that you're learning by somebody and it uses a 1-4-5. You can use these triads to play that song. There's no limit to what you can do with them as long as you understand what we're doing in terms of C chords and 1-3-5 and our triads and everything like that. Hopefully you enjoyed this little lesson on triads and voice leading and playing musical chord changes and moving beyond bar chords. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.